Dawn breaks over Montgomery as black commuters gather at bus stops, scanning empty streets nervously. A woman clutches her purse tightly, glancing at her watch, calculating the walking distance to work. Buses roll past half empty, drivers staring straight ahead, ignoring the waiting crowds completely. Police cars idle nearby, officers watching through windows, hands resting on dashboard radios. A man steps toward the curb, hesitates, then turns away as neighbors call his name sharply. The bus pulls forward slowly, brakes hissing, door remaining closed despite people standing inches away. Riders inside sit scattered, avoiding eye contact, knuckles white against seat backs. At another corner, a group of women arrange carpool assignments, voices low, eyes tracking patrol cars. One woman writes addresses on scraps of paper, passing them quickly between trembling hands. A young minister arrives in a sedan, nodding toward waiting passengers who climb in silently. Behind him, more cars approach, forming an impromptu convoy moving toward the industrial district. Police follow immediately, maintaining a close distance, headlights reflecting off the rear windows. The convoy slows deliberately at intersections, forcing officers to brake repeatedly, engines revving impatiently. At a church basement, organizers spread maps across folding tables, marking routes with a red pen. A veteran draws circles around police stations, explaining patrol patterns and shift changes precisely. Women argue over scheduling conflicts, voices rising until a hand slams the table, demanding focus. Someone mentions arrests starting soon, bail money needed, lawyers already contacted, but unreliable. A young man volunteers to coordinate pickups, scribbling phone numbers while others debate coverage gaps. Outside, lookouts position themselves at corners, signaling when officers approach or linger too long. Children run messages between blocks, memorizing instructions repeated until they recite them perfectly back. A business owner unlocks his storefront early, allowing organizers to use the back rooms for planning meetings. Police circle the block twice, slowing near the entrance, forcing conversations to pause. Inside, leaders argue whether to expand boycott boundaries or consolidate efforts around existing routes. A woman warns about retaliation targeting churches, homes, and employment without legal protection guarantees. The minister counters that waiting for protection means waiting forever. Voices need raising now. Tension thickens as someone mentions informants already identified, names written down, and evidence being gathered. The meeting breaks suddenly when headlights flood the windows, everyone freezing until the car passes. Organizers exit separately, staggered intervals, avoiding clusters that attract attention or invite confrontation. At dawn the next day, buses run nearly empty again, drivers reporting losses, companies demanding explanations. White officials hold emergency meetings, pointing at revenue charts, demanding immediate action against organizers. A city commissioner proposes arresting carpoolers for operating unlicensed taxi services without permits. Police receive orders to monitor churches, track vehicles, and document anyone assisting boycott participants. Officers set up checkpoints near black neighborhoods, stopping cars, demanding licenses, and searching trunks thoroughly. A driver is pulled over, carrying 6 passengers, cited for overcrowding, and fined heavily. Word spreads quickly, carpools adjusting routes, avoiding main roads, using back streets and alley shortcuts. At a mass meeting, hundreds pack the sanctuary, standing room only, voices rising in hymns. The young minister steps to the pulpit, speaking calmly but firmly about dignity and economic power. He explains that empty buses represent lost revenue, companies bleeding money daily from their refusal. The crowd murmurs agreement, nodding, some standing, others clapping rhythmically to emphasize his points. Police officers stand at the back, notebooks open, writing names, faces, and statements, word for word. A photographer's flash goes off repeatedly, documenting attendees, creating records for future reference and pressure. The minister pauses deliberately, letting silence settle, then continues without acknowledging the surveillance presence. He calls for continued commitment, reminding everyone that comfort is the price of change. Outside, cars are ticketed systematically, officers writing citations for minor violations, invented on the spot. Drivers return to find windshields covered, fines totaling more than weekly wages for some families. Organizers respond by establishing walking groups, dozens moving together toward workplaces before sunrise daily. Employers complain about late arrivals, threatening terminations, and demanding workers return to using public buses immediately. A maid arrives exhausted after walking 6 miles, only to be told her position is eliminated. She leaves silently, chin raised, refusing to let supervisors see her hands shaken. At City Hall, officials debate ordinances, targeting loitering, assembly, and unlicensed transportation without hearings. A clerk drafts language broad enough to criminalize almost any organizing activity under vague pretexts. The ordinance passes quickly, announced through newspapers, enforceable immediately without warning or grace periods. Police begin arresting pedestrians walking in groups, charging them with obstructing traffic and public nuisance. A woman is handcuffed on her way to work, children watching, crying, neighbors powerless to intervene. Bail is set deliberately high, forcing families to pool resources, depleting savings for future emergencies. Organizers scrambled to establish legal defense funds, collecting donations during church services and community gatherings. Lawyers volunteer time, but warn that capacity is limited, and cases are piling up faster than courts can process. Meanwhile, white citizens' councils formed, holding rallies, distributing flyers, demanding that boycott leaders be jailed permanently. Anonymous threats arrive at ministers' homes, messages scrawled on paper, promising violence without specific dates. A brick crashes through a church window during midnight hours, glass scattering across pews and aisles. The next morning, congregants sweep silently, children helping, no one discussing the attack openly. Insurance companies refuse coverage renewals, citing increased risk, leaving properties vulnerable to further damage. At another planning meeting, organizers debate whether violence is coming regardless of their restraint. A veteran suggests organizing armed guards for churches, protecting leaders, and deterring midnight attacks. The minister rejects this immediately, insisting visible weapons would justify crackdowns and mass arrests. Arguments intensify until someone mentions children, families, and the cost of escalation beyond their control. The room quiets, faces hardening, everyone recognizing the impossible choice between safety and principle. A decision is made to increase lookouts, establish alert systems, and prepare evacuation plans instead. Phone trees are organized, coded language is developed, and drills are practiced until everyone knows their assigned roles. Days later, a mass arrest sweeps through Montgomery, officers targeting known organizers and visible leaders. The young minister is taken from his home at dawn, handcuffed, and led past neighbors recording. Others follow throughout the day, churches emptying as members are detained, charged with conspiracy and incitement. Bail hearings are delayed deliberately, holding leaders in custody, disrupting coordination and community morale. Outside jails, supporters gather, singing, refusing to disperse despite police orders and threatened force. Officers form lines, batons ready, advancing slowly, pushing crowds backward inch by inch. A woman locks arms with others, standing firm, faces set, eyes never leaving the approaching uniforms. The standoff holds, neither side moving, tension crackling, breath visible in cold morning air. Inside cells, arrested leaders discuss strategy quietly, aware that guards listen, words chosen carefully. They agree to maintain the boycott, regardless of personal consequences. Messaging passed through visiting family members. News spreads quickly, resolve hardening across neighborhoods, participation increasing despite intensifying crackdown and risks. White business owners dependent on black customers panic, profits collapsing, pressure mounting for negotiated settlements. Secret meetings occur between moderate whites and boycott representatives, exploring compromise without official acknowledgement. Proposals are offered, rejected, countered, each side testing limits, seeking advantage without conceding core demands. Meanwhile, harassment continues, police stopping pedestrians, searching bags, questioning destinations, and creating constant intimidation. A young woman is detained for hours, questioned repeatedly, and released without charges, but shaken deeply. She returns to organizing the next day, voice steadier, explaining what happened, warning others. Carpool drivers report being followed home, license plates recorded, employers contacted, jobs threatened quietly. Some quit under pressure, families needing income, unable to sustain resistance without financial safety nets. Others continue, finding new employment, accepting risks, believing collective action outweighs individual security. At night, organizers meet in rotating locations, avoiding surveillance, sharing intelligence on police movements. The scout reports increased patrols near churches, suggesting raids planned, timing unclear but imminent. Documents are hidden, records dispersed, and key information memorized, eliminating evidence vulnerable to seizure. Leaders draft contingency plans, assigning backup coordinators, ensuring boycott survives arrests, or worse, a woman volunteers to manage communications, accepting that she becomes a visible target, exposure unavoidable. The minister places his hand on her shoulder, nodding, understanding the sacrifice without words. Outside, the city waits, tension rising, both sides preparing, knowing confrontation approaches, resolution distant. Buses continue running empty, companies losing thousands daily, refusing refusing to negotiate publicly despite private desperation. White officials demand federal intervention, claiming outside agitators, communists, and conspiracies are threatening social order completely. Investigators arrive, interviewing residents, reviewing records, finding only local people demanding basic human dignity. Frustration mounts as simple explanations fail. Oppression requires complexity to justify, and evidence undermines official narratives. A journalist publishes photographs of empty buses alongside images of black commuters walking miles daily. National attention shifts toward Montgomery. Questions are raised, pressure is building, and local control is slipping despite escalating force. City leaders respond by tightening restrictions, increasing fines, expanding arrests, hoping exhaustion breaks resistance. Finally, instead, donations pour in from distant cities, strangers funding bail, supporting boycott, sustaining momentum. Organizers expand operations, coordinating with allies elsewhere, building networks extending far beyond Montgomery's boundaries. The young minister receives letters daily, some threatening violence, others offering solidarity and material support. He reads them silently, filing threats, responding to allies, calculating resources, and planning next escalations. At a midnight strategy session, leaders debate whether to demand integrated seating or complete desegregation. Arguments flare over goals, tactics, timing. Everyone exhausted, stakes rising, certainty fading. A voice cuts through, insisting partial victories mean nothing if core oppression remains unchanged. Another counters that survival requires flexibility, principles balanced against brutal reality and community capacity. The minister listens, saying nothing, eyes moving between speakers, weighing options without revealing preference. Finally, he speaks quietly, proposing they continue the boycott until companies capitulate completely or collapse. The room falls silent, understanding the gamble, the risk, the potential consequences, extending beyond transportation. Someone asks, what happens if violence escalates beyond their ability to control or protect people? No one answers. The minister stands, meeting adjourned, decision made, path set, regardless of cost. Outside, police cars circle slowly, engines idling, headlights, sweeping walls, waiting. Morning arrives with news of fire bombings overnight. 3 homes targeted, families escaping through back windows. Fire trucks arrive late, water pressure is weak, and flames consume porches before hoses finally reach structures. Neighbors form bucket lines anyway, salvaging what remains. Police watching without assisting or investigating thoroughly. A child's bedroom collapses inward, smoke billowing, belongings reduced to ash within minutes of ignition. The minister arrives as dawn breaks, surveying damage, speaking quietly with shaken families still in night. Photographers document the ruins, images transmitted nationally, forcing officials to issue statements condemning anonymous violence. Privately, police reports describe incidents as accidental, electrical faults, unrelated to boycott activities or tensions. Insurance adjusters arrive quickly, denying claims, citing policy exclusions, leaving families homeless without compensation or recourse. Community members pool resources immediately, offering spare rooms, furniture, clothing, whatever can be spared temporarily. Organizers call emergency meetings, debating whether bombings signal escalation requiring armed self-defense measures. Finally, the minister again refuses weapons, insisting moral authority depends on restraint despite provocation and danger. A veteran stands, voice rising, demanding an explanation for how restraint protects children sleeping when bombs explode. Others join, frustration boiling over, arguments intensifying, unity fracturing under pressure and fear's cumulative weight. The minister listens without interrupting, letting anger exhaust itself, then speaks about power beyond violence. He explains empty buses represent economic pressure that white authorities cannot bomb away or legislate into submission. The room quiets gradually, exhaustion replacing anger. Everyone recognizing they're trapped between principles and survival instincts. A decision is reached to increase neighborhood patrols, unarmed but vigilant, watching for suspicious activity nightly. Volunteers organize shifts, coordinating through phone trees, establishing protocols for alerting authorities despite their complicity. That evening, patrols begin. Men walking streets in pairs, flashlights scanning alleys, noting unfamiliar vehicles. Police stop them repeatedly, demanding identification, searching pockets, and threatening arrest for trespassing in their own neighborhoods. Patrol members comply silently, documenting encounters, building records of harassment for potential legal challenges later. Meanwhile, city officials convene private sessions with bus companies discussing bankruptcy possibilities and political fallout. Revenue charts show unsustainable losses, projections indicating collapse within months without resolving the boycott immediately. Executives demand city intervention, subsidies, legal action, anything preventing financial ruin from spreading further. Officials hesitate, recognizing concessions embolden resistance movements elsewhere, creating precedents they cannot afford politically. Compromise proposal emerges. Superficial policy changes, maintaining segregation while appearing responsive to demands. Black representatives reject this instantly, refusing meetings, dismissing proposals, and insisting on complete desegregation or nothing. White negotiators express frustration publicly, blaming unreasonable demands, portraying themselves as victims of extremism. Newspapers amplify this narrative. Editorials condemning boycott leaders for refusing reasonable compromise and prolonging hardship. Black-owned newspapers counter with documented abuses, photographed violence, and testimonies from families bombed and harassed nightly. The battle shifts into media spaces, competing narratives circulating, each side seeking broader public sympathy. National civil rights organizations send representatives, offering legal expertise, funding, and strategic advice from experienced organizers. Local leaders welcome support cautiously, wary of outsiders controlling messaging or diluting community-driven decision-making processes. Tensions emerge over tactics, timelines, and acceptable compromises, resolved through lengthy negotiations, establishing clear boundaries. Legal teams begin preparing federal court challenges, arguing segregation violates constitutional protections under recent precedents. Filings proceed slowly, hearings are delayed repeatedly, and judges sympathetic to segregation are controlling dockets and scheduling deliberately. Meanwhile, boycott participation remains near total, walking becoming normalized despite physical exhaustion and employer retaliation. A woman loses her job after arriving late, repeatedly, a termination letter citing unreliability without mentioning the boycott. She finds work elsewhere within days. Community businesses hiring, supporting families targeted for participation and resistance. White employers begin feeling pressure as black workers become scarce, labor shortages disrupting operations and profits. Some quietly abandon segregationist stances. Others double down, firing entire staffs, hiring white workers at higher wages. Economic disruption spreads beyond transportation, affecting retail, domestic work, and service industries dependent on black labor. City revenues decline as commercial activity slows. Tax collections drop, budgets are strained, and infrastructure maintenance is deferred. Officials blame boycott organizers publicly, while privately acknowledging their own policies, created unsustainable economic conditions. A closed-door meeting occurs between moderate business leaders and ministers, exploring pathways towards settlement. Proposals are exchanged carefully, language is scrutinized, trust is non-existent, and each side is constantly expecting betrayal or manipulation. Ministers insist on complete bus desegregation, courteous treatment, and hiring black drivers as non-negotiable conditions. Business representatives claim these demands exceed their authority, requiring political decisions beyond corporate control entirely. The meeting ends without agreement, both sides frustrated, recognizing that resolution requires broader coalition building. Organizers shift strategy, targeting economic pressure directly at businesses benefiting from segregation while opposing change. Selective buying campaigns begin, avoiding stores, refusing service, or support segregationist politicians and policies openly. White merchants panic as profits collapse, blaming boycott leaders, demanding city action, and threatening to relocate businesses. City council members face competing pressures. Business community demanding a resolution. Segregationist voters demanding absolute resistance. A council member proposes negotiating secretly while maintaining public opposition, attempting to satisfy both constituencies simultaneously. This fails immediately, leaks exposing duplicity, enraging segregationists, and confirming black communities' distrust of official promises. Violence escalates as extremists act independently, targeting churches during services, homes during dinners, and cars during carpools. Shotgun blasts shatter windows. Mid-sermon, congregants dropping 2 floors, shielding children, praying while glass rains. No injuries occur, but terror spreads. Attendance drops temporarily, and organizers debate canceling public gatherings entirely. The minister refuses, insisting that visibility demonstrates resolve. Abandoning churches means surrendering the moral high ground completely. Services continue under armed guard provided by veterans defying earlier decisions, protecting without seeking confrontation. Police observe these guards closely, seeking violations, opportunities to arrest, disarm, and eliminate protective measures. A legal challenge emerges questioning whether armed guards violate weapons ordinances. Hearings are scheduled, and outcomes are predetermined. Organizers prepare for arrests, establishing bail funds, identifying replacement guards, and ensuring protection continues regardless. Meanwhile, federal court hearings finally begin. Constitutional arguments are presented, precedents are cited, and testimony from affected residents is presented. Witnesses describe humiliation, economic hardship, and physical danger resulting from segregation policies enforced through violence. Defense attorneys dismiss claims as exaggerated, presenting bus company representatives denying discriminatory treatment or practices. Cross-examination reveals internal documents contradicting testimony, showing explicit segregation policies and discriminatory enforcement rules. The courtroom grows tense as evidence mounts. The judge's expressions unreadable, ruling delayed indefinitely without explanation. Months pass, boycott sustained through winter, community exhaustion visible. Resources stretched, patience thinning but holding. Donations continue arriving nationally, solidarity growing, other cities watching Montgomery, considering similar campaigns locally. White officials grow desperate, recognizing their credibility eroding, national attention exposing brutality previously hidden successfully. A secret proposal reaches ministers through intermediaries, offering partial desegregation, limited concessions, and face-saving compromises. Ministers reject immediately, demanding full compliance, refusing to negotiate away principles for political convenience or expediency. City officials respond by indicting boycott leaders under obscure anti-conspiracy laws rarely enforced previously. Mass arrests follow, dozens taken simultaneously, overwhelming jails, creating chaos, galvanizing support rather than breaking resistance. Supporters flood courthouses, bail hearings becoming mass demonstrations, judges over proceedings delayed, system straining. National media coverage intensifies. Photographs of arrested ministers appearing nationwide, sparking outrage and donations flooding organizations. The boycott strengthens paradoxically through repression, each arrest creating martyrs, each conviction generating broader solidarity. Bus company executives privately acknowledge defeat, seeking exit strategies, negotiating settlements despite city opposition. Officials refuse authorization, insisting on maintaining segregation regardless of economic collapse or national condemnation. The impasse continues, neither side yielding. Montgomery paralyzed, watching, waiting, tension unresolved. Federal court ruling finally arrives, declaring bus segregation unconstitutional, ordering immediate compliance and desegregation. Celebration erupts briefly before reality settles. Implementation requires enforcement. Compliance is uncertain, and violence is likely. City officials announce refusal to comply, appealing the decision, vowing resistance, and encouraging defiance among segregationist supporters. The first integrated buses roll out under federal marshal protection, armed escorts visible, tension palpable. Black riders board cautiously, sitting forward, ignoring threats, enduring stares, proving compliance despite hostility. White passengers respond variably, some exiting immediately, others sitting silently, few showing acceptance or courtesy. Drivers follow orders mechanically, avoiding conversation, enforcing federal mandates without enthusiasm or personal commitment. Violence erupts sporadically. Buses are shot at during routes. Riders are assaulted at stops, and drivers refuse to enter certain neighborhoods. Federal marshals cannot protect every bus, every stop, every rider throughout Montgomery simultaneously. Community members organize escort systems, riding together, protecting vulnerable passengers, documenting incidents for legal action. Bombings resume targeting leaders' homes again. Explosions damage property, terrifying families, and testing resolve continuously. The minister's home is hit, family unharmed, front porch destroyed, message clear. Despite official condemnations, he stands amid rubble the next morning, cameras recording, voice steady, refusing to abandon Montgomery or movement. Organizers meet urgently, assessing whether victory's cost exceeds community's capacity to sustain further violence. A woman argues they've achieved the goal, desegregation ordered. Continuing risks 2 lives without additional gains. Others counter that implementation remains incomplete. Retreat now means abandoning progress, inviting future rollback. The minister listens, face drawn, exhaustion visible, shoulders bearing the weight of decisions affecting everyone present. He speaks, finally, proposing they maintain pressure, support riders, document violations, and pursue legal enforcement relentlessly. The vote passes narrowly, unity fragile. Everyone aware casualties may follow, and no guarantees exist. Integrated bus service continues awkwardly. Compliance is partial, harassment is constant, and federal oversight is gradually withdrawing over time. Some neighborhoods remain effectively segregated through intimidation. Routes altered, services reduced, victories incomplete despite rulings. Black riders persist, nonetheless, claiming space, asserting rights, enduring hostility daily, refusing retreat. White extremists escalate, targeting random riders, creating fear, and attempting to restore segregation through sustained terror. A young woman is beaten severely, hospitalized. Attackers are unpunished despite witnesses. The investigation is perfunctory. Community outrage builds. Demands for protection intensify. Federal intervention is requested. Responses are inadequate, and platitudes are offered. Organizers realize legal victories mean little without enforcement. Enforcement requires political will, and will depends on sustained pressure. The campaign continues indefinitely, goals shifting from achieving desegregation to maintaining it against constant erosion. Years pass. Buses remain integrated officially, and practically segregation persists through economics, geography, intimidation, and subtle exclusion. The minister reflects privately on victories hollow without fundamental change, wondering if tactics need even. He sees younger activists growing impatient, demanding more direct confrontation, questioning nonviolence's continued effectiveness. The movement fractures slowly, generational divides emerging, strategic disagreements intensifying, and unity is maintained through effort increasingly. Montgomery becomes a symbol simultaneously of resistance's power and limitations. Victory incomplete, struggle ongoing. Black residents ride buses daily still, sitting anywhere, small dignity claimed. Larger battles awaiting. The system adapts, absorbing pressure, maintaining oppression through modified means, and resistance requiring constant reinvention. Night falls over Montgomery, streetlights illuminating empty bus stops. Tomorrow's riders, preparing struggle continues.